That day there was an explosion at the plant and people in the crew he was working with wound up getting killed. Ask Reddit on Reddit Rundown. What giant bullet have you dodged? When I was 16, I had a good friend whose father was a wealthy businessman of some kind. This is Chicago, and I guess his dad started screwing around with the wrong guy's woman. My friend told me it had something to do with the mob or a mobster's wife. I never knew for sure, but do know that I saw firsthand his dad get threatened, at a tennis court of all places, by two well-dressed clearly Italian men who drove up in a black Cadillac. I was sitting right there with his friend as they talked to him, and it was exactly as I imagined it would be in the movies. My friend said there was a contract on his dad. He actually said it like it was cool, and at the time, I guess I thought it was too. I was invited to go with them on a fishing trip in Lake Michigan that week. My friend, his dad, his dad's friend, and I. 2 days before the fishing trip, something happened with a member of my family and we had to go to Cincinnati for a few days. When I returned, I learned my friend's body was found floating in Lake Michigan. He was wearing a life vest. His father, his father's friend, and the boat were never found. Police questioned me about what I knew and who I'd seen talking to his dad. But I think I was lucky that I said I couldn't describe what they looked like and didn't get wildly specific. Either way, the coolest kid I knew, Chris, was dead. And they never found his dad, the dad's friend, or the boat. It was a nice boat on a calm day on Lake Michigan. And something bad happened. Always felt I dodged getting caught up in something I wouldn't have escaped from. In uni, my two best friends and I were drinking, playing Mario Kart, and just shooting the shit. We were hungry and wanted food. I said, let's just make a tombstone pizza because we've been drinking and most delivery services were closed at 1:30 a.m. One said he's fine to drive. I said no, bad idea. He got the other guy to go with. McDonald's usually doesn't take 2 hours to get, so eventually I went for a scooter ride since McDonald's was less than 2 miles away. I noticed there's a taped off spot on the bridge right before McDonald's with a crane, cops and an ambulance. They curbed the car and drove it off the bridge and into the shallow creek top first and died on impact. I dodged the nuke of death but ate the bullet of survivor's guilt for nearly 5 years. Edit. I was not expecting all the upvotes, awards and positive feedback. Thank you everyone who read this and felt something, because life is tough and you never know when it's the time. Have a nice day and thank you all. Edit. Based off the comments, I guess I have a few things to add. 1. I am doing well. Depression and fear of driving lasted a pretty long time. Moving back home for 2 semesters helped a lot versus being alone in the college apartment we shared. 2. It's those old Razor scooters that you kick, not a moped or electric scooter. 3. I took the keys of the driver but he had a spare key and they left when I went to the bathroom. Got to the living room and they were gone. Looked out the window and his car was gone. Verbally said, fuck, what an idiot. His dad is going to be livid if he gets pulled over. When I was 11, I started losing vision in my left eye, and eventually went completely blind in about 2 to 3 weeks. After lots of testing we found that I had a brain tumor in my left optic nerve that would likely spread quickly. They gave me a year and a half to live in the best case scenario with treatment. They got the eye surgically removed, started me on radiation and chemo, and luckily, I responded well to it. Cancer's long gone. And now a cyclops, and happy to be disease-free. I had just moved to Colorado by myself, and for whatever reason my mom was encouraging me to get out of the apt and go see the new Batman movie. That was the night of the theater shooting, and not only was that the theater, but it was also the showing I was considering going to. I stayed up late playing League of Legends instead and woke up to a lot of texts and missed calls. Probably not ideal for my family's blood pressure that I slept in pretty late that day too. I had some chest pains one night and woke up my wife to tell her. She got a little scared that it might be a heart attack and we agreed that I should go to the ER. The nurses were pretty sure it was a false alarm but would run an EKG as is common practice. In my head I was hoping that the chest pain would come back, not to prove a heart attack, but so that we can find out what the chest pain was. The EKG was done by one veteran nurse and a new nurse. I was watching over their shoulders. Something was flashing on the screen that made both nurses look at each other with disbelief. They ran it again and one nurse went out to the station for help. The other stayed with me and very nicely told my wife and daughter to go back out to the waiting room. A few seconds later 5 to 6 more people came into the room slowly and calmly and began prepping me for something. It turns out that I was having my second heart attack that night in the ER. The doctors and nurses found an obstruction in my heart and were prepping me to have it cleared and a stent placed. When I got out of surgery, the doctor who placed the stent told me, "You probably picked the best time and place to have a heart attack, right here in the ER." Back in college. Ex cheated and got preggo. Blamed it on me, involved her family and all. I was willing to file a case in court with medical legal as needed. Ex got too pressured as I was talking to her dad about medical tests etc. Out of nowhere she admitted that I wasn't the father and it was some classmate she had a fling with. Somebody replied, "I had a similar experience." She told me she was preggo. I believed it was my child. She let me believe this for 8 months, and at the end said it might not be mine, after I had sold my house to move to the other end of town so her other child could still go to the same school. The father of that child lived in that end. It's complicated. And she was a total bitch to me the whole time she was pregnant. Anyway, got a DNA test when the child was born and it was not my child. Having seen the way she spoke to the father of her other child, I dodged a giant nuclear missile with this one. It would have been 18 plus years of pure hell. On a road trip in college with 4 friends. We stopped halfway for a pit stop because I had explosive diarrhea and was getting sicker by the minute. Friends carried on to Vegas and left me with one of the guys who rented us a car to return home. The friends that carried on got into a rollover, 1 died, 2 will be injured for life. We went to Thailand in 2003 for Christmas. I spent a number of years there in the early 90s as a kid, and loved it so much that we were going to do it again the next year. Spend Christmas watching the sun come up on a beach at Phuket again. We had the tickets and everything, but because of some new fallout from an Enron adjacent scandal, my dad wasn't allowed to leave the country. He wasn't implicated, but was in the C-suite of a credit card company, and all such people were under travel advisory. Anyway, the very hotel we were going to stay at got 100% wrecked by the tsunami, so I guess we got lucky. My father-in-law was working on construction of a power plant and was scheduled work Sunday, was a union pipe fitter. Saturday, he got a call from another company asking him to run a job much closer to his house, think 5-minute commute versus 50, so he accepted and didn't go to the power plant job Sunday. That day there was an explosion at the plant and people in the crew he was working with wound up getting killed. Edit, doing everything to avoid using the cliche "this blew up," given the context. To confirm because it was being asked a lot, yes, this was the plant in Middletown, Connecticut. This was a pretty significant event in the state of Connecticut and made national news, so I'm not shocked so many of you were able to identify exactly where it was. I'm sure my father-in-law wasn't the only one that didn't go in that day, as it was also Super Bowl Sunday. I once asked a stripper what her weirdest request was. She told me that she had a regular customer that she would visit after the end of her shift. He loved to smell her shoes. He wanted them to be ripe from her walking around all day. After he smelled her shoes, she would piss in a cup and she would pour the piss through her used shoes and he would drink it. So, I was on top of my boyfriend at the time, and I was going at it like it was my last night on earth or something. Smacked my head hard on the slanted ceiling above the bed. Completely knocked myself out and my nose bled everywhere. Spent the rest of the night in A&E being treated for a bad concussion. Also, don't get me started on the guy I just used to see for casual. He was incredible in bed, we were both having an awesome time, next minute he jumps about a mile, which felt amazing for me, and starts giggling really high-pitched, not so good. My reaction was, what's so fucking funny? Turns out my dog had got on the bed without us knowing, being pretty distracted at the time, and was merrily licking this guy's balls. Pretty awkward. Poor dog. Thanks for listening to Reddit Rundown. Give a thumbs up and subscribe, and help me get to 1,000 subs. Leave a comment below on what kind of topics or stories you would like to hear. You can also check out other videos on my channel. Thanks and have an awesome day.